All right, well, we are back for another podcast. On my left is Callahan Henry, IOTV superstar.
That was too rehearsed.
Sounded like it, didn't it? On my right's Nick Parsons with Hasty Bake.
How's it going, guys?
Just
Fabulous.
couldn't be better.
Awesome.
So I was going to say your title at Hasty Bake, but
I didn't give it to you ahead of time, did I?
you didn't.
No.
President?
Vice President of Marketing and Operations.
Vice President.
And head janitor and plumber and all around whatever the heck it takes to keep a company going.
We could share business cards
Hey, I just change the name out. That's all we got to do.
Yeah.
Perfect.
and the logo.
Hey, some days I wish my business card just said janitor on it. I would get a lot less phone calls.
I mean, I feel the same way.
Or you get a lot more phone
Well,
calls.
that's probably true, too.
Yeah.
So we all shared a pretty cool experience. For me, it was a first. I know Callahan.
Might as well have been a first as a second.
Okay, and Nick.
Same first.
Same first. What was your first crane
Yeah, it
hunt?
was. Yeah.
Oh,
All
heck
right.
yeah.
We went on a sandhill crane hunt here in Oklahoma. Oh, it's been a few months now with Crane Wreckers. Cool name, by the way.
Yeah, really. And cool
Crane
logo, too.
Yeah. I guess it's pretty cool realizing that all three of us, it was kind of our first crane hunt, and just sort of some background on us and cranes in general. And so going into it, when a friend of ours, mutual friend, Shannon Young, called me and asked me about it. It's funny because we were doing the narration for our episode and talking about this, but I was like, yeah, I've never hunted sandhill crane, so yeah, whatever. And so I called Callahan and was like, hey, you want to go on this crane hunt? And he's like, you could hear it in his voice. He's like, sandhill crane?
Oh, yeah.
And he's like, yes.
Been on the hit list.
Been
Yeah.
wanting to do that one.
Yeah.
And it's funny because every time you talk to somebody who's done it, it's a whole different level of excitement.
100%.
I don't know, beyond just, they're awesome to hunt. They're giant birds, but man, they taste good.
Yeah.
So we'll get into that here in a minute. A lot of listeners, know this. We're going into our 17th season on Inside Outdoors TV.
Haven't
Callahan.
been around that long.
Yeah.
It's pretty good, man.
It seems like
Almost longer than I've
3
been
or 4
alive.
years.
Yeah. Baby over here.
How old are you? 27?
I'll be 29 this year.
29. Newly married.
Yeah.
He joined the club.
Might as well be.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I should have one on. I'm sorry, I don't. Forgot it this morning. I'm getting used to it.
Workplace hazard right there.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Especially in heat and air. I guess you don't want to be touching a bunch of stuff with a
Yeah, and
metal ring.
I got those rubber ones now. I just keep forgetting to put it back on.
Yeah.
Why do you
Good
take it off?
excuse.
Because it makes my fingers sweat.
And so how long you been with Hasty Bake?
Been hanging around for about 10 years doing stuff for them. Did classes and
Just like in the
events
parking
and-
lot?
Yeah, just in the parking lot. Begging a lot.
Yeah.
Stealing stuff when they go home.
Got to be a lot of free food.
It's wonderful. Yeah, no, I've been there for about 3 years now. About 3.5 years. And been hanging around for about 10 years. So I did classes and events for them, kind of did some spokesperson stuff for them for a while. And then it was a kind of a natural fit. I was looking to make a career change. I worked for Outdoor Channel for a long time.
Right.
And I wanted to make a career change. And had already been getting pretty deep into barbecue, and conversations happened there, and it just worked out.
Just didn't like working for a network?
I just took a lot out of you. We went through a lot of changes. We were privately held, and then publicly held, and then privately held again, and a lot of changes, a lot of movement. Truthfully, I loved every minute of that job, but after a while, I just wanted to change.
For the most part, a lot of good people, but there was a big sort of rollover in staff.
Yeah, there's been a few of them.
Yeah.
What year was that?
So I think I started there in 2008, 2009.
At Outdoor Channel?
At Outdoor Channel, and then we got bought out maybe 13 or 14. So there's a big rollover there because they moved the network from Southern California out to Denver, Colorado.
Oh, that is big.
So that was one of those, and they already had other networks that they were running. So you had a lot of duplicate, jobs that they had to kind of eliminate. I think they probably got about a 20% acceptance rate on the relocation packages because most people, you're in Southern California. If you live there, you want to live there.
Yeah.
So some people went to Colorado, and then I think might have been 19 pre-COVID or right around COVID time. They had another big, and I don't know all the politics or details or anything behind it, but they had another big rollover in staff.
Which is funny because you think Outdoor Channel that, if I lived in California and they said we're moving your job to Colorado, I'd
Right.
be all in.
Right. I think it was a lot of technical jobs because most of the producers were out this way anyway.
Yeah.
You had a lot of the the QC people and the closed captioning and the mission control control center, but all those kind of guys, satellite mission control astronauts, no, all that satellite engineers and all that kind of stuff. Like those are the guys where they could commute 55 minutes up the road into LA and probably make double what they were making when they were down in Temecula, California. So they weren't hurting for a job; they just happened to like where it was. You take it out to Denver and you have, a much smaller market with a lot more competition. So I think for a lot of guys, it was just a logistical thing.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So what were you doing at Outdoor Channel?
So I worked, I got hired on, I used to work in TV film in LA. Prior to that, that was my degree in college. I jumped in, was doing editing and producing. And then to pay the bills, I started doing a bunch of IT stuff. So I learned enough technical to kind of get into that and then played around in that world for a while. So got hired on. Worked for the state of California for a while, and then got hired on at Outdoor Channel to be a kind of an IT production engineer. So I had a big background because of editing and all that, and Mac and servers and rendering and all that kind of stuff. So really kind of lived in the IT operations world with them for a long time. And then again, kind of had wanted to get out. So it had started a couple of companies once we had kind of moved out here about 15 years ago. And we're doing, obviously, marketing and growing those companies. So it was kind of a natural fit when I wanted to make a career change to get out of IT to go into what I was really enjoying doing.
Did you have like a hunting background or anything like that before you started working for the Outdoor Channel?
So it was a little bit more angling in California. We did do quite a bit of hunting in the Sierra Nevadas.
Cool.
So during college, we'd go up there for a couple weeks on end, and had family in Utah and Texas, and we'd go hunt out there. We didn't come from like a long line of hunters. My dad he hunted a little bit, but did more fishing, but was introduced to it really in college with a bunch of dorm guys who came, from all over the states and introduced me to it and fell in love with it. So when we got the opportunity to come out here and actually do it, frequently, it became a whole new ballgame.
I'm instantly regretting not having this conversation with you years ago.
Yeah.
They're listening to each other. Like we have so much in common.
Big similarities and backgrounds.
Really?
Yeah, and and I didn't realize you were that involved in the technical side of editing and production.
Right.
Yeah, I could have asked you for a lot of help at certain points.
I don't know if I could have helped, but I could offer opinions that may or may not be
You
real.
You could have been there.
Yeah. You get two idiots in a room and everything works right.
Even a blind squirrel finds a nut every now
That's
and then.
right. But I didn't start hunting until probably midway through high school.
Okay.
I had my girlfriend's best friend was dating a guy that, generational hunter.
Yeah.
And so by default, we had to hang out together because of our girlfriends. And he's the one that introduced me to hunting.
Deer hunting initially, or
no, some, but majority of it was waterfowl and upland. They had bird dogs and a retriever. What's funny is he had I don't remember which, at Doc and Jip were their two, some kind of pointers. I think I know one of them was a German short hair, and that dog would retrieve ducks and geese. Yeah, he would retrieve in water.
Wow.
So we'd take those two waterfowl hunting. But I'd grown up, playing just about every sport except I think volleyball and ice hockey. And we camped a lot and fished a lot just because, my dad's background in the fishing industry. And it was cool. It was something I realized I could do when it was too cold to do anything else. And so, he got me into hunting. The first duck hunt we went on, we probably spent 2 hours busting ice, trying to get enough cleared out to set decoys, and we might have shot a duck or two. And I absolutely...
Not enough to even justify wanting to clean it.
No.
Makes
but
it hard to go back.
I fell in love with it. It was like, it was just awesome. It was something to do outside.
That's when you're hooked. If you do that and you want to go back.
Yeah.
There's an adrenaline there that goes into doing something new like that and clearing a hole and working for it. And even if the reward isn't there, you're still like, man, I like this experience. I didn't mind that work because I was working towards something I really was enjoying.
Yeah. And I don't know what's worse. You try something new and it's just like the most like say this duck hunt, if it would have been the most epic duck hunt, just, you know, raining ducks, and we limited out in 15 minutes, and then, you know, I went back the next weekend and it was just terrible.
Right.
And we kept going back and it was just terrible. Would that be worse than going and, you know, having the experience that I did and then slowly getting better and better, and then now I understand and appreciate those great hunts?
Yeah.
Definitely comes with appreciation once you do that and put all that effort into it, and you just get skunked sometimes.
Yeah.
But it makes those days when you do get into it and it goes the way they say it does on TV, that makes it that much more special.
Yeah, it was a special spot, but Jimmy Davis was his name. We stayed friends for a long time. His parents were awesome. They were kind of like, you know, second parents at the time. We got to be really, really close friends, and you know, so he did some deer hunting, and so I didn't own a rifle or anything, so I went and I think I want to say my girlfriend's aunt owned a pawn shop, so I went and bought a bow from her. Maybe she gave me one, got some arrows. Didn't know if you just said draw length or what poundage do you want, or, you know, how heavy of a broadhead. You want expandable or fixed blade? I'd have been like, I need a bow and an arrow.
Maybe a couple.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
I might miss one.
So I had this bow.
Do you miss in the sport?
Right?
I had these arrows and just went out and, you know, would shoot. We put hay bales in a plastic trash can and got probably 10 yards. I think back then I was probably like, I'll get like 10 feet. Yeah. And then we'll go to 20
Because that's
feet.
realistic.
Right? So got to where I could back out and, you know, slowly shoot and, you know, hit where I was aiming, and tried for 2 years on public land to bow hunt, which was a joke.
It's hard, man.
At one point, like the end of the second season, I had a doe coming around a field where I was going to get a shot, and some guys came walking through and busted her out. And I remember just that screw this. Took the bow back to her, took everything. I was like, I don't want it. We'll stick to birds. You know, you can laugh and talk and fart. You don't have to worry about sound or smell or. So just the similarities. Maybe not farting and talking, but you know,
maybe more than you know.
The technical side. Yeah, I wish I'd have known before that you were into production that much and had that knowledge.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because, you know, for a lot of years I thought it was a waste. I enjoyed it, loved every minute of it. I mean, like I said, going to college, that was what I studied: documentary film production and script writing, screenwriting, all that. And got into production, absolutely fell in love with it. And then when I got into the technical side of stuff, it was more of a money thing. Like I had a buddy who was like, man, I'm making, you know, so much a year doing this, and I'm working normal hours. And it was kind of like, man, I'm sitting up, you know, there's old days when computers would take 3 days to render something, and, you know, you're pulling everything off DV tape or Betacam. So I was like, man, you're not sitting in an edit bay at 3:30 in the morning, like sleeping under the desk because you're waiting for this thing to render. And so it was more of a just logistical, like, well, that makes more sense. So I thought the whole film thing, you know, production thing was kind of like, well, it was a waste of a degree, and I guess I went into this for money. And then eventually over time, I'm like, well, I want to do it for money, and I don't really love it. And so it was kind of a weird thing to have a career reset later on down in life. But I wanted to do something I really I love now. So I feel like, well, maybe it wasn't a complete loss because I do more production now than I did, you know, back then.
What was like your first hunt that you remember going on?
So it was funny. I was telling my wife this a couple weeks ago. I've lucked out on two things recently in regards to my first couple hunts. So I went with some buddies up to Sierra Nevadas. Might have been my sophomore year of college, and we drove up like 8 hours up and you know, and we hiked a day and a half back, and it was going to be hardcore. You know, we're all going, oh man, type of thing, base camp, and we went out hunting, and we were hunting. There's 4 of us, and we broke out into twos, and both of us had this deer on our sights. And he goes, you shoot it. And he goes, you shoot it, I'll take the antlers, you take the meat. It's like, deal. So shot bow hunt, shot it. I took the meat, he took the antlers. He's a college kid. Didn't have to go shopping for a while. I thought that was a good deal.
Scored on that one.
Right. And then...
Can't mount the meat.
Can't mount the meat, right? So then similar thing kind of happened about, I don't know, maybe 5 or 7 years later. I was hunting with a buddy of mine who also met in college, and his family had a ranch up in Utah. And we were mule deer hunting. And he had been on that ranch a million times, and we got up and he put me on a great deer. And I shot it, and he goes, "You want the antlers or the meat?" I said, "Well, shoot, man, I'll take the meat. I never had mule deer before, so we took the meat." And had kicked myself for years. I'm like, man, this is my first mule deer hunt and my first bow hunt, and up in Sierra Nevadas. And I was like, got nothing to show for it. I ate all the meat. And in the last 6 months, both of those guys have called me, and one of them said, "Hey, I got married, and my wife doesn't want this mount, and it was the one we shot in the Nevadas. You want it?" And I was like, "Yeah, man." So I paid to have him ship it over to me and put it up in my studio. And then it wasn't 3 or 4 weeks later, my buddy who was in Utah calls me and he goes, "Hey, Mom and Dad sold the ranch and we're clearing out stuff." And he goes, I found this mount. And he goes, "Do you remember the deer we shot?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Describe it to me." And I described it to him. He goes, "This is the mount, man." He goes, "You want it?" So he shipped it to me. So I got
Really?
both my first
Dude, that's
first bow
freaking
hunt and my
awesome.
first mule deer mount sitting in my,
And you got the meat too.
and I got the meat too.
Wow,
So
that's
the
super
payback
cool.
was a little bit longer, but
Heck
I
yeah.
think I won on both.
That's
of
awesome.
Nice.
Heck yeah.
So you sort of covered it. Now, at Hasty Bake, are you doing the marketing? I mean, is your job title
Yeah,
is
so
kind of
it's kind of a weird thing. So
coverall.
it's not a traditional. It is traditional marketing in some sense. Like we're doing, ad buys and all that kind of stuff. But we do a lot of content marketing and a lot of event marketing.
Okay.
So I spend a lot of time filming stuff either in studio or on location, doing recipe stuff and event and cooking, live fire stuff, all that kind of stuff for video production. And then we do podcasting, so that's kind of on the media side of stuff. And then we go doing events, and I'll hire out videographers and photographers for events because I'm too busy hobnobbing and trying to make sure things are running okay. So we'll get all that done, and we'll get all the footage back, and then I take it back and I edit it all because I'm cheaper than hiring somebody out. In most cases, sometimes I have to, but I'll do most of the editing for it. So it could be better, it could be worse. But yeah, so it's been interesting getting back into the game and feeling like, okay, I know how to do this. Like it looks a little bit different now these days, but I'm enjoying it a lot more being back. It feeds your creative side, and then it makes it a little bit more tolerable when I'm sitting in those meetings and we're talking about remarketing and ad rolls and what's our KPIs and all that kind of stuff. It's like, all right, this is part of business, but next week I get to, go do this film shoot, or I get to go, whatever it is. So like last week, 2 weeks ago, we were at Memphis in May. I don't know when this will air, but we were at Memphis in May. We did that. We were there for 4 days, cooking with a team called Jonesy Q, who's had numerous calls in competition barbecue at Memphis in May, which if you don't know what Memphis in May is, it's one of, if not the largest barbecue competitions in the country. Kind of the world championship of barbecue, if you
That's
will.
where the soul of it is.
Yeah, for sure, man. That and American Royal, and we go to both every year. But Memphis in May this year, they knocked it down from having, 150, 200 teams to, I think it was like 75 or 100 teams that got the invite. So what ended up happening was all these teams would reach out to teams who didn't get invited. And they're like, hey, we need the All-Stars, so bring them in. So everyone would invite all these people to kind of fill out their teams, and they compete. So we got invited to that. So we went and competed at not as Hasty Bake, but as part of this guy's team. He, like I said, he'd been doing it for a while, and we shot video for all that. And then I landed at, I think, midnight on Sunday night, and then 6 a.m. I was on a flight out to Ohio to go do a commercial shoot with an ad agency that we work with out there. So that was kind of fun because I hadn't AD'd in a while, so it was nice to kind of sit back. And I did a little bit of on-camera stuff, but most of it was just ADing while somebody else was doing all the hard work.
Yeah.
So it was nice kind of being back in that environment. And
Sounds like a cool gig.
yeah, it was fun, man.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun.
Cool.
And I'm sure they probably got some kind of idea, but Hasty Bake,
Yeah,
they're grills.
they are. We are the oldest grill company in the country.
Oh,
We were
really?
Founded in 1948. So Weber came around in 52. They're probably one of the most popular. Over the next 10 or 15 years, a slew of other companies were founded, but we were the first. Founded by a guy named Grant Hastings, who is literally a World War II hero. And while he was overseas, he was missing American barbecue. So he's trying to dream up a ways to cook barbecue over, really, in the shithole. Can I say that here?
You just did.
I just did. So he digging pits and buying chickens from local farmers and figuring out how to rig up rotisseries and stuff like that for it. And then came home and started fiddling around, hired a welder, and they developed a grill model that they thought was great, and they started a company, and that was 75 years ago this year. So yeah, we're the oldest. If you look at the original patents for Weber and Charbroil and PK grills and all that, they actually have to reference our patent on their patent.
Really?
because we were the first ones to put wheels on a grill. We were the first ones to put a hood, like a lid on a grill. Before that, it was just an open pit.
So you got them.
So we put them on there. And then when they came out with it, they're like, hey, that lid's idea is a good thing. We're going to put one on it too. And then there's a little patent reference number on it. You can look it up and it kicks back over to our patent.
So did they get a royalty from it back then?
Yeah, I think for like 20 years or something, they had to pay royalties for using those things. And then eventually patents expire, and it's free. It's kind of like Yeti dealt with, back in the day when everyone was able to knock them off and couldn't get sued. So yeah, but we've been around for that long. So we're 100% American made. All the steel comes from America. All American workers, and we're made right here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Always have been. But it's a cool thing, man. For anybody who likes barbecue, it's kind of an all-in-one. It's a smoker, it's a grill. We got little portable ones. We got big, gigantic backyard ones. You can move the fire away from the meat, which is a big thing with charcoal cooking. Like if you're cooking in a Weber, that fire gets too hot, you're screwed.
Yeah.
Take the meat off and let it cool down. Really can't do much with it. But on ours, you can crank it down and move it around, so it becomes real versatile. So we've got a pretty popular following of people who've tried all these other grills and like have things they like and don't like about them, and then they'll buy one of ours and they're like, "Crap, this solved all the problems I was dealing with."
And I'd asked you on the hunt when we were cooking the birds, and we'll get to that too. But
Yeah.
Hasty Bake, I was thinking haste, like quick.
Yeah.
I was thinking it was like some fast cooking.
A lot of
grill,
people do.
but
Yeah, it actually came out just a little bit before the Easy Bake Oven came out.
Oh yeah.
So we would get a lot of defense over the years. Like the founder went on record saying like it probably wasn't the smartest name in the world, but it's what we went with at the time, and we'll stick with it. But yeah, the founders were Grant Hastings and Gus Baker. So they kind of put their names together and came up with an unfortunate name for a company that we get to carry on for 75 years.
And it's neat because it's a huge and very old company, but it sounds like it still has a small, family-owned company feel to it.
Yeah, it's not publicly held or anything. Truthfully, we have about 100 employees that work for us.
Okay.
And out of that 100 employees, because we also own a fabrication facility that does stuff for, oil and gas and defense and all that kind of stuff, as we get contracts for it. So grills are about half, maybe a little bit more of what we do. So out of the 100 employees, I'd say probably 30 of them are truly dedicated to just building grills, and then the other ones kind of rotate in. So, by numbers, there's 30 of us that run this 75-year-old company, and those are the welders and the guys that are working the brake and the assemblers and all that good stuff.
That's cool. That's kept here in the U.S. too, and especially being like right here in Oklahoma. That's super cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's hard to control things when you send them overseas. Like Weber and all those guys, they figured that out, because what happens realistically is the draw to go overseas is a lot of those materials are subsidized. So you go to China. I have a cost of goods sold when I produce something. There's a hard cost to make it here, right? And a good chunk of that hard cost is my physical product. So like when I buy steel is, a good chunk of the cost of that grill. Well, when you go to places like China, they subsidize all, the government does. So they're like, hey, we want to keep all the work here. So we'll give you all the free steel you can. Like you just pay for labor and, whatever. So when you go to China, like you can get stuff for a heck of a lot cheaper. But the trade-off is the minute you send something to China, 3 minutes later, that thing has been re-engineered, redesigned, and those plans have been sold to 15 different companies, and they're going to start producing it under whatever badge they can. Yeah. So that's why you can look at, I need a new refrigerator online, and 18 different brands, and they all have the exact same refrigerator, and all the pictures are the same, and it's because they're all factory pictures.
Yeah,
it's the same piece. It's just whatever badge is slapped on it before they put the box top on and throw it on a storage unit.
I've got this little Hasty Bake story I want to share with you real quick. So we've got this hunting cabin. You've been to it. You know what grill is sitting on the porch out there? That's a Hasty Bake.
Is it really?
So like the first time I went to this cabin, I think I was 13 or 14 years old, and it was just a group of
like 40 years ago.
Yeah. But so like the grill was there when we got there and everything. We're gonna cook dinner. So they fire it up. Never heard of Hasty Bake. I'm just a small town country boy. We didn't have Hasty Bake. We had make a fire pit and cook a steak or something. Right. So we fire up the grill and everything, and they cook these steaks on it, and it was just like, oh my gosh, this is so good.
Right.
And it was a Hasty Bake, and then we meet you and everything like that, and that grill is still there, and we still cook steaks on it. And it's holding up. It's had pack rats in it when we go down there because it's a cabin that we just go down in hunting season, so it's got all summer to.
It's a great shelter for everything.
Yeah,
for 9
it's
months
outside,
out of the year.
but it is just still there and still doing it. So it's super cool.
One of my favorite things that we get to experience because we've been around so long is literally not a weekly, a daily basis. We'll get phone calls or emails from people, And the joke internally is like, who gets to take the next phone call that starts with, well, I've got this old Hasty Bake. But we'll get them daily. And it's, Grandpa's old Hasty Bake, and this thing's 48 years old, and I still need a part for it. And we're like, hey, good luck. We got the parts for it.
Y'all need to start
we got them here.
A calendar, this old Hasty Bake.
So we've actually talked about it because
Really?
we have, the models throughout the years.
Yeah.
But we'll get pictures all the time. And, I got to send you a picture of Grandpa's old Hasty Bake. And the thing looks like, a little worse for wear, but not rusted through, still has paint on it, still usable, and it's like 60 years old. And it's just kind of cool. It's like a good reminder of, everything you do, like you're part of the history.
Yeah, it's big.
Like I've got the opportunity to design and help design a handful of grills over the last few years that I've been there. And it's kind of a neat mantle to wear where it's like, man, in 30, 40 years, somebody may be using that grill that like I helped design.
And that's a big deal.
It's a big deal.
Yeah. And they haven't, the aesthetics of them have changed, and there have been some internal mechanisms like being able to raise and lower the tray, we call it charcoal tray.
Mm-hmm. Firebox charcoal tray.
But it's, essentially, it hasn't really evolved with all the pellet grills and electronics and all that. And we call it a grill or a charcoal grill, but you can smoke on it too.
It's a smoker too. Yeah, absolutely. To our detriment, we probably don't push the smoker part enough because honestly, I use it as a smoker more than I do almost as a grill.
Yeah.
We cook more barbecue on it than, we grill on it quite often, but we cook a lot of barbecue on it. It's got a heat deflector you can put over it and kind of turn it into like an offset grill. But yeah, it's, what's funny is in the grill world, you'll see Traeger or Weber, these guys come out with a new grill. It's the 2022 model, 2023 model. And little tweaks here. They got a new color on it or a new knob on it or whatever. Or a complete redesign. And you're like, Traeger did that this last year. And to their credit, they got a little bit better.
More settings on the Wi-Fi.
More settings on the Wi-Fi, better, fancier screen. But I've helped, lifted it up a little bit. Things got a little beefier, got a little fancier. I think they, took some criticism into account. But they come out with a new model every single year. And to us, when Grant came out with his grill, he made several tweaks to it over 5 or 7 years and then kind of locked it in. He's like, no, this is it. Like, this is the way to cook. And over the year, like we tried to change things. And in prototype, not in release. And it's like, does it cook any better than it did? No, it cooks worse. Well, then go back to the original. And same thing. So every, decade we tweak a little thing. And if it ain't broke.
Yeah.
So, in a lot of ways, it's almost the exact same cooker that's been around for 40, 50, 60 years, functioning in the exact same way. Because, if it continues to work and you can't improve it, it's not about releasing a new model. It's about, are you able to improve it or expand what it does? And if you can't do that, then just go back to what works. So a lot of people will be like, well, that grill looks a little retro. We're like, yeah, because retro works.
Yeah.
Like you try to hit that design, in a different shell, a fancier, new modern shell, and you're just not going to get the performance out of it.
How many times you hear people, the comment, they just don't make them like they used to.
Right.
And, it's said for a good reason.
Yeah, for sure.
So the fact that, you guys still make them like you used to, the quality that was known back in the day, quote unquote, it's
stands for something.
Probably a good testament on why the company has survived at such a level for so long.
Well, and like to the point he made, about, making them in-house for as long as we did, the detriment of selling to China, other than the cost, is that, over time, you may get into big box stores. There's a reason Charbroil and Weber and them, they can get 20,000 units shipped next week, and in every single box store, and we're small. I don't ship 20,000 units a year. But that was one of the reasons we kept them here. Is like, we don't want to be big. We don't want to be in every box store. We want to continue to make the quality we do, and you can't make that kind of quality on that larger scale. I don't care who you are. Even if you are American made, you can't make that kind of quality at that price point on that larger scale.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, so this does actually tie into a crane hunt.
Yeah. we cooked up a lot of crane.
We did. So, so they call them the ribeye of the sky.
I want crane right now. Can you cook some up?
Man, I pulled some out of the freezer this week. I'm like, man,
you still have some left?
I still got. I think I got 4 breasts left.
We smoked that thing.
I've got 2, and I was talking to him earlier. I was like, I think I'm going to go home and cook mine.
I don't think we made it a month.
I should have just jumped into them. So we cooked this last weekend for Memorial Day. And I had dry aged some deer backstrap.
Oh boy!
House.
Oh boy!
But and I don't know if you've ever dry aged backstrap.
Next time is what I need.
And I'd never tried it before, but I had a couple friends like, "Hey man, throw it on a rack, put it in the fridge for a week, let it sit, and kind of get a little rind on it." But I did that so it darkened up and it kind of vacuumed and kind of squared up. So I was cooking it. My daughter's like, "I was really hoping you were gonna make crane. I'm so glad you made crane." I'm like, "Yeah, I hate to disappoint you."
You should just told her it was.
Yeah.
I know, right?
And there's-
Brownie
She'd
points.
know.
Brownie points.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe. We'll get to the cooking part. Shooting them, like on the episode, you'll see Callahan, who still does a lot of waterfowl hunting, especially because of where he lives. It's right out the back door, and as much as I
Makes
did,
it easier.
for me, I don't get to do near as much as I would want to. We just don't have a lot of episodes on it. I think waterfowl is one of those that you sort of have a dedicated following. There are some great waterfowl shows, but for the most part, if you're a big game show, you're hunting big game. But it was an opportunity to do something a little bit different, and just hang out with some great group of guys. So Callahan gets out there and makes it look ridiculously easy shooting these things that are big old giant birds, and
70 yards.
Like we
out.
talked, they're the size of a pterodactyl.
we swap out, and I think the first two groups that came in when I was behind the gun,
You had some Kentucky windage going out
I
there.
don't think I hit anything on the first group, and then I think the second and third group, when I was behind the gun, I shot one each time, and then got it dialed in. But
He told it. I forget what it was, but he told us at some point. He's like, you gotta shoot. I don't know if it was under him or ahead of him or something, but it was a couple of us missed him. He's like, I don't remember what it was though. Do you?
You got to aim at them.
Well, you got to aim at.
So
No,
big.
it was. I think what it was is they were. Was when they were dropping down.
so
Could have been.
I think that's what it was because he
I
said they're
realized
gonna
I had
like
to aim
wait for it.
Yeah.
As soon-
just
'cause they got to
over
get
him.
closer. That's what it was.
Yeah, that
He
was.
said
a big
like
part of it.
they will be in your face before you pull.
be
that
100
trigger on.
yards, and you're like, oh, they're right here because
Right.
they're so big. But you got to let them get
well,
there.
and you can hear them 10 miles away. It sounds
Right.
like they're right out
Oh, for
outside
sure.
the blind, but they come in and just get louder and louder and louder, and they're ridiculously loud. But
Yeah, you think they're right there and they're not.
and they're hard birds to. I mean, they're tough.
Well, the thing about them being that big is that you just throw up and you think you're on them, and you pull the trigger because they're so big. You're like, oh, I'm gonna hit one of them, and they're so bunched up together. But you've got to pick one out.
Well, and it's the
and let it rip.
wingspan. I mean, they look so big because their legs are so long, their neck is so long, but their body.
You got
I mean,
6 foot out there. Just
The breasts weren't really much bigger than
The goose.
a goose.
yeah.
I remember. I don't remember if it was you or you, but one of y'all ran out there on the first run to go pick it up, and they just picked up that wingspan, and like you couldn't stretch your arms big enough to hold the wingspan of
tip,
that
yeah.
bird. Like it was
Yeah.
just massive.
Yeah, big bird.
Yeah, they've
Big
got
bird.
what average like 6 foot wingspan.
Yeah, I mean, I was expecting it to be about the size of a Canadian.
And they said they haven't evolved in 20,000 years.
20,000 years.
Yeah, I was looking up some stuff on them that I took some notes on just because as anytime I hunt something new, it's like fun to dig into kind of where they came from. And yeah, I didn't realize that it said they're one of the oldest living birds in the world. That they go way back. There are, and then it
So
was
let's
funny.
kill them and eat them.
Yeah, right. There's there's some talk as you look. It depends on which website you're on and whether or not they're endangered. But I guess there are some subspecies. I think we were hunting the lesser.
I think they were the less.
So we've got the
sandhills.
sandhill. The whooping crane is what is endangered.
Yeah, that
Right,
one
yeah.
you don't want to shoot.
No, don't shoot that
We
one.
have a few bad experiences.
But I guess they've got
in-
like a
in
Mississippi
Oklahoma about that.
sandhill crane. They've got a
No, you
Cuban
didn't.
or
Okay.
Mexico or something. They've got some subspecies that I guess are not very high in numbers.
Right.
But for the most part,
Well, that's why it's important to go with guys, especially for
Yeah.
the first couple times, that actually know what they're doing.
Yeah.
It's not just from a makes the hunting easier standpoint.
I had
but
no
from the
idea that
identification.
we were shooting
standpoint.
2 different kinds while we were there. I had no clue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No
Okay.
clue. And he
And
started
I think it
talking
was
about-
lesser or greater,
Yeah,
right?
it was. Yep.
right. Yep. Yeah. They and they look. I could see how someone who wasn't with an outfit or someone who knew what they were doing, because like last year there were 4 whooping cranes in Oklahoma shot.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Like it's,
So they, I mean,
that's not a boo boo you want to make.
No. Now that one will get you a new house pretty quick.
Yeah.
With one small room, but they look pretty similar. I mean, whooping cranes are a little bigger, but if you didn't really know because their head, what you're looking for with that red cap and the
Right.
beak and the size.
Are you talking about whooping cranes? Or are you
Yeah.
talking about herrings?
No, whooping cranes.
Okay.
They're the main difference.
I know
is
there's
they're
been some
white.
herrings killed, and I'm like, oh, look at this! I got a whooping crane.
No, the whooping cranes are. I mean, they're white, in flight you can see the black wingtips.
Okay.
But as far as like the body size, and they sort of have the same.
If they
red
decoy,
and-
they're probably going to get shot.
Yeah.
I was
You
going to
don't know.
ask them, and I forgot. Do they often flock around with
yes.
other? So they do. So they'll get
Whooping
mixed
cranes
in.
will be in with
Oh, boy.
sandhill cranes.
Oh boy.
But
There's some
once
old
you
boys
see
who-
a picture side by side, it's
Very
pretty
obvious.
easy because they're, sandhill cranes sort of have that steel blue, sort of a grayish tone, and whooping cranes are going to be a brighter white.
That I don't know if it's merled or whatever the texture that the gray is, where it's kind of muddled
Yeah.
with the gray and the white. It's beautiful, man.
It is.
Yeah.
Like
Especially
you
with
can't
that
tell
red
far
head.
away, and you get up on it, and you're like, "There's like 5 different shades of
Yeah.
gray on here. It's all silver and
And it's got kind of like that orangish tint
Mhm.
on the tip of the feathers and
Yeah.
stuff,
Yeah.
and then they got that red face.
And so a whooping crane in flight is really easy to see the black tips. When their wings aren't out, you can't see the black tips.
Oh,
Gotcha.
okay.
But yeah, so that would be a pretty easy tell when they're coming in. I mean, waterfowl hunters, we know we got to be pretty up on our game on
Yeah,
what
because the
ducks-
limits and stuff.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's sort of the more you do it, the more the quickly you can identify the
Yeah.
bird. But I kind of remember hearing some stuff about whooping cranes in Oklahoma last year. I didn't realize until just prior to this podcast that there were 4 of them shot.
I mean, I definitely can see if you're either not experienced or not paying enough attention or had one too many whatever's in a red
Yeah.
Yeah.
cut. That you could hit them. But 4
Yeah.
seems heavy.
Yeah.
It also is amazing me that 4 get reported.
I
Social media
I
probably.
mean, you
were
gotta be.
found.
Yeah.
I know
Or
at
they
least one of
found,
them
is that
was
what it was?
found. Yeah, it was
Okay.
found wounded, ended up dying. But yeah, I didn't dig too much into
It's
it.
a
to
lot of
know.
people talking.
Yeah, it's a lot harder to get away with stuff nowadays.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is, man. Pictures, they're real.
Especially
Yeah.
doing in this industry, everybody's at your throat. So you got to make sure that.
Yeah.
We probably should have looked up all that stuff before we went.
Well, that's why we.
Why you
yeah,
go with
that's why we're with
experienced
Crane
guy.
Wreckers. They got us. They got
Yeah,
us.
it said they average about 10 to 15 pounds. We're not talking about whooping cranes now, but sandhills, 3 to 4 feet tall, average 6 foot wingspan.
Think about it, 3 to 4 feet tall.
4 foot's chest
Like
high.
that's chest high when
Yeah.
they're standing. That's a big ass bird.
Yeah, dude.
Shane's eye to eye with them.
Yeah. Well, they couldn't
Right.
show.
Yeah.
They couldn't show the footage, but you saw me kick that one, didn't you?
Yeah.
I
I forgot about that.
Yeah, we were looking at something that was funny.
Yeah, I mean, that's
Because
you
you
know, to a
have to like when you
non-hunter
go
or
when you go
anti,
out there to
that's-
get one,
Yeah.
and that sucker is eyeballing you and is gonna. So they will peck
Oh,
out.
and they look mean as shit
yeah.
too.
So like the
Yeah,
dogs and
they're
stuff that
aggressive.
they have them, they'll peck out eyes and stuff. They defend themselves. So
Yeah.
I just knew what I had to do, and it was funny.
I mean, the cost of shells these days.
Yeah, I'm not gonna shoot
Boots
them
are
again.
almost cheaper.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's probably true. This episode sponsored by
Yeah. Pele.
Cool.
Yeah, they said the oldest recorded age of a sandhill was 37.
That's crazy.
Dang.
That is, it was banded in 1982. Don't remember where it was banded. I think it was banded in Florida.
So was it 37 or had it been banded for 37 years?
It was banded in 82. They found it in 2019.
So it could have been older than that.
Yeah,
I
don't
mean,
know
you
how
would
old it
think
was
that
when banded it.
they would know what the juvenile
In
was.
I would
theory,
assume
yeah.
they
Yeah.
banded it as a baby.
Maybe not.
I don't know.
It's crazy though.
I don't know. You know what a baby sandhill crane is called?
No, I do not.
That-
Oh,
I feel like he's gonna make this up on the fly right now.
A colt, of all things.
really?
COLT, like
Yeah,
a horse.
Like a horse.
I'll be dang. They're big enough.
Not a polt.
A colt.
No, a colt. And useless knowledge. I have so much storage
I
of
don't feel like-
useless knowledge
I can
in my
use
head.
that. I can
That'll
use
come
that.
out at some point. We'll be in a blind at some point.
Yeah.
And you're like, I don't know, that one's a colt. And
Colt
everyone's
on
like,
the left.
what?
Colt on the left.
Yeah, you know,
They'll
what,
be like, what?
Word of
What's
the day.
horse?
you know what a flock of sandhill crane is called?
A whooping?
No,
A commune?
a whooping. A sedge.
What?
I don't
Okay.
know
Is that,
who
is
comes
that
up with
used in
these.
any other grouping of animals? A sedge?
Did you Wikipedia
I
this?
don't know.
Oh, for sure.
It was on it was a U.S. Game and Fish.
Okay, cool. Good for
deal.
them.
Sedge.
Good for
Yeah.
them.
Sedge. I don't know. It kind of sounds like an Indian.
A siege or a sedge?
Well, depends
SEDGE?
on where you
Where you went to
emphasize it.
school.
SEDGE. Yeah. Sedge. Siege.
Yeah.
Sedge.
I think it'd be sedge.
Sedge, yeah.
Sedgi.
Spaghetti.
It's Norwegian for.
It's a spaghetti.
Yeah, they're migratory birds, obviously, from up Alaska and way up there, all the way down to Mexico, Florida.
Put some miles on.
Yeah.
And then we get to whack them in between.
Yeah, we've got a big wintering ground
Kill
here.
them
That's
on vacation.
Yeah, so we were by the Salt Plains out there in western Oklahoma.
I think so.
close. Yeah, it's a big wintering area for them.
I mean, there's a lot of outfitters running around out there. You saw them
Yeah.
glassing every morning, and
Yeah, that was a cool deal.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're. I know cranes are, I guess, in a lot of countries or people, not people.
Nations.
Yes. Cranes are like regarded as a mythical creature or some kind of
Symbol of
yeah.
Good or bad or
Good.
really?
Yeah. A lot of like Asian cultures.
yeah, the crane is the like wisdom and
that's right,
stuff
huh?
like that, or
Yeah.
maybe something like that. I'm probably totally wrong. But
Actually,
I feel like crane is
I
wisdom.
think it was this year. I think it was 2023. It's on some part of some initiative, but it's on the Forever stamp. One of the Forever stamps.
The sandhill
yeah?
crane is,
Yeah.
or just a crane?
Sandhill crane, I think.
Yeah, because they're
That's cool.
migratory bird. They're not waterfowl. They're considered a wading bird.
Yeah.
What other bird
But
is
not like
considered
not
a
the
wading
federal
bird?
duck stamp, but just the general Forever stamp. You know. You get
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. I don't know
Okay.
how many designs
That's kind
they
of
come out
cool.
with a year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they come up with a number of them, right?
Yeah.
A
it's-
number of forever stamps a year.
Yeah. And
Is there any other birds considered wading? Like, is a crane the
I
only
would-
species of
You know, like I would guess it. They said it because of their long legs. So anything that
like a flamingo or something?
probably,
maybe,
or like maybe like a sandpiper, maybe because they're. Or, I mean, they're
Are flamingos wading birds? I guess.
I'm just thinking they got long legs and they hang
Not
out
a
in the
wading
water.
bird. Are they considered a crane?
Oh, I have no idea.
no. I don't think so.
Jamie, look that up, will you?
Send Stephen
Can
Fernella.
you get that on the screen, please?
Send Fernella a email and ask him. But yeah, it was pretty cool. Some of the stuff they talked about. They can average 200 to 300 miles a day in flight.
That's crazy. Two
I
to
mean-
three
I mean,
hundred
like whenever they would get up, you know, on the show, like when I'm like, oh, there they are,
Yeah.
dude,
they're 10 miles out.
Well, you
and-
can hear them like they're
Yeah, and they're way out there, and you're like sitting there, and you're like, all right, these things are gonna get close. They sound close, and then you look, and they're still way out there. And you were telling me something about like the wings.
Yeah, so Russell, one of our guides, was telling me, I guess the shape of their wing, you think kind of like a speaker.
Yeah.
They're angled downward, and when they call, the reason they sound so close is they call into their wing,
It
and
pushes
it amplifies the sound and pushes it down.
Really?
So they can be right above you. And we had it happen to us at the very last day. We were, filming some pictures and some video footage when we're all
that's
said
right.
and
They're
done.
right up above
And
us.
we had this tornado of them above us
That
that
was wild.
conveniently were not above us an hour and a half ago when we were in the blind.
Right.
But I mean, they must have been, they were half a mile above us, and they sounded like they were 100 feet above your head.
Fixing a light on us.
I mean, you almost could not hear your own conversation over them, and none of them were, well outside of shotgun range,
Yeah.
200 or 300 yards outside of shotgun range, and they were so loud you couldn't even talk.
I think they were. Wasn't Russell and Brian? Weren't they saying they were catching the thermals? They
Yeah,
go up and
that's what they do.
Rest for the day, or
yeah, that's
something
how
like that
they
in here?
rest is up in the sky.
We
It's so
we watched
strange.
them do it the second day we were out there. They weren't anywhere close enough for us to hunt them, but they were catching thermals, maybe half a mile away. And when you were watching them go up to where you couldn't see them anymore, they caught it and just kept going higher and higher and higher.
Wow, cool birds.
Definitely.
Good eating. So we killed our limit both days pretty quick, and then after I guess the first day we cooked them, right?
Yeah, first
Took
day we
them
cooked
back, took our pictures, and so this is where it got really cool. You brought one of the grills.
Yep.
Camp, or what do you call that?
the
one?
Ranger.
The little small Ranger.
Yep.
That's like a travel tailgater.
Yeah, we have two of them. One kind of looks like a toolbox, and it's kind of something you'd like bring in the duck blind to cook up eggs and bacon in the morning, or that kind of thing. And then we had the Ranger is a little bit bigger.
I need to go duck hunt with him.
Hey, I'm telling you.
That's what I'm thinking.
I'll be the cookie. But yeah, with the Ranger is a little bit bigger and has the ability to move that fire back and forth, so you can kind of smoke on it. But I brought that one because we were cooking a bunch of different stuff, and because we'd never cooked them like that before, I didn't know. Hey, do we slow smoke these? Do we cook them hot and fast? So I wanted something that could like flip on a dime because we were basically learning as we were going.
we passed the test. You passed the test.
We did, but I mean, I don't know, how much of it'll, make the show versus, be on the floor. But we I don't want to say ruin, but we butchered a few of those breasts trying to figure out how the heck to cook them. I think we'd overcooked them and thought, okay, is it something like chicken where, you can take it up to 180, 190 internal, well past like
meat for
and
sure.
it doesn't fall apart, and we determined, okay, don't do that.
Yeah, on the thighs and stuff when we were trying to get that figured out. Yeah.
So what we did learn, if it's helpful to anybody else, is you got to cook it pretty much just like you would a ribeye, like beef. Like it's got to be medium rare. Even the thighs and stuff, like you really want to stick to that medium rare, 135 to 145 internal temp on them, and they'll pull apart like beef. But if you take them up like you do a chicken wing, they do not get tender anymore like a chicken would.
Yeah, I think editing the show, watching back, the clips, I think you said when you were checking the temperature, we were taking them off at like 125, 130, right?
Yeah, and that seemed to be the best eating. I think we played around with 3 or 4 different temperatures, and that seemed, for me anyway, it seemed to be the best eating. But again, it resembled beef with the chew, with the pull, with the temp, like even with the texture of putting the thermometer probe into the meat, it felt like you're stabbing a piece of steak.
Yeah, so I made the comment on the show too. I was under the assumption that, as they were referred to as ribeye of the sky, was because they were just the best tasting of all birds. But I was extremely surprised at the texture. I mean, I've duck hunting as much as I did back in the day. I have no qualms saying that I have never been able to cook waterfowl that tastes good. I've choked down just because I don't. I try very hard to not throw out anything I, kill when I cook it, regardless of how bad I do. And I've choked down some nasty waterfowl that I've tried to cook.
It wasn't mine though.
No, I'm talking about me cooking.
He doesn't eat the coots you shoot.
There are a lot of.
Don't throw
No,
down
I've
like
had
a
some
coot
guys,
shoot.
Callahan, a couple years ago, hunting with him, and I've had so many other people that can cook it, and it tastes amazing. And it just pisses me off every time, knowing how many times I've tried, even given recipes, and for some reason, it's just one of those meats that I can't nail it for some reason.
But you can cook a ribeye, so you can cook.
I can cook a ribeye.
Yeah,
cook a one of the crane breasts.
You think, but
so the ones you took home, you were happy
No, the
with,
ribeye,
right?
yes. The cranes, I did, yes. Like I said, maybe a month. I mean, inviting people over and just
you're proud enough
sharing
enough
it,
to pull people
was.
over.
Yeah. But on those, you cooked a couple of different ways, right?
Mm-hmm.
You just grill, other than the seasoning. You seared some.
We seared some off. Like you said, we slow cooked some, which I would recommend doing. We did kind of do a reverse sear on a couple of them, so we moved them over to the colder side of the grill and smoked them a little bit. Yeah. And then seared them off at the very end. I really liked that. I think they took the smoke really well.
And the way you seared it, that was pretty cool, with a spray.
Yeah, and I use this trick on beef all the time. That's right. As soon as we realized it cooks like beef, I'm like, all right, this is home turf here.
So I'd never tried this until I saw what you did.
It's great.
And I didn't realize it at the time until I was watching the footage back.
Oh, really?
Exactly what you were doing.
Yeah, because we were doing a bunch of stuff that day, in and out.
We were cleaning.
We were cleaning and cleaning, and then Brian kept bringing out. What are you bringing out?
Catfish
or crappie.
Crappie.
Oh,
Kept frying up crappie in between, and we were getting fat and happy. No, but it's a trick I use on beef a lot because I'm a big fan of having like a sear crust on the outside. Like I get the guys that cook steaks and they like the fancy grill marks and it looks cool, when you throw it down on the plate. But I like that crust. I feel like it builds up a lot of flavor. And one kind of cheater way that I figured out to do that is meat. When oil and meat touch each other and then it's exposed to heat, it has something called a Maillard reaction. And it's basically the meat browns over really, really easy. It's the same kind of thing when you put a steak on a really hot flat iron, and put a weight on it, and it's just like tons of metal contact. Like all that heat with the fat coming out of the steak form kind of that browning reaction. So the easy cheater way I figured out how to do that is you take a can of a canola spray or duck fat. I think I had duck fat at the time, but any kind of spray oil. And about the time you're ready to sear it. So you don't do it when it comes up to temp because you'll cook the hell out of it. But maybe when it's 115, 120 degrees internal, so it's still pretty rare, hit one side with the oil and throw that down on the fire. And I count to 20, 30 at the most, depending on the size of the meat. And then I take it and I spray the side that's not facing the fire and I flip it. And I do that 4 or 5 times back and forth and I spray it every single time. And every single time that oil, when it gets hot, it browns the meat, and it keeps going and going and going. And you'll take a piece of meat that looks, not bad, but it doesn't look pretty.
Yeah.
And it'll form this perfect brown crust that's not like hard crust, but just like, unbelievable.
So you're wanting to keep it from igniting whenever you spray, because like in the video, it ignited.
So I mean, in a perfect world, you pick it up from the fire and spray it and put it down. But if you spray it on the grill, it'll ignite a little bit. You got to be careful because there is risk of it kind of coming back up in the can. But you don't do a lot of it. A little quarter-second spurt here and there, and I flip it back and forth 3 or 4 times.
You're just well trained, so you can get that.
Pyrotechnics are part of my background.
I actually thought you were doing it
that way
to flambe. Yeah. No, it was more just to get the oil on the meat and have that reaction.
Okay.
But it works real good on tri-tips, on ribeyes, on all those things that are thick enough to take it. You have a real thin, half-inch cut, ribeye cheapie from the butcher. You're not going to be able to cook it long enough to get that reaction before you overcook it. But if you got something nice and thick, 1.5 or thicker, you can definitely get a really good reaction on it.
That's good to know.
But I mean, again, we were playing around with ways and trying to learn and experiment. Luckily, we had plenty enough meat to.
So cook it like a cow. Cook it like a cow.
Cook it like a cow, man.
Yeah.
A lot of good spices. We had 4 different.
Or more. I think we ended up having the garlic butter with kind of a thick, coarse salt, pepper, garlic was, I think, kind of the favorite that we had. But again, like you season it like a piece of beef. So you said you thought maybe it was just because it was good eating. I had assumed ribeye of the sky meant, dark meat, which I'm used to with waterfowl.
Yeah.
So I thought, maybe it's good eating and it's dark meat. I didn't realize, like you, that no, they say that because it does taste like ribeye. Like you could put it in front of someone and with blindfold, and I bet you half the time or more they couldn't tell it was anything other than
my freaking mouth is watering.
I know, we should have cooked up dinner before we started.
I should have planned this better. No, it was good. And you tried to cook the thighs.
Yeah.
It's
okay. It's a good way not to waste that meat. But what I would do with the thighs from now on is to slow cook it,
braise it,
or pressure cook it, and then pull it off because it's got all those bones and stuff in there.
It is hard to debone it.
Yeah.
And if you cook it, I think we did try one where we cooked it kind of medium rare, like you would the breast.
Mm-hmm.
And it was fine. It had a little bit more pull than you wanted, but it's not huge.
Yeah.
So I'm with you. I mean, I think you put 8 or 10 of those things in a pressure cooker or
make some tacos
even a stock
or something.
pot or something like that, and braise it with some, consomme and onions and stuff like that. I think you get that to fall off the bone.
I've been seeing a bunch of people do it like turkey leg and stuff like that, and it's a super good way not to waste any meat.
And probably pretty quick cook too.
Yeah.
Well, I've seen the guys that take them and make like a big giant lollipop or something. But I'm not sure.
Yeah, I guess you could do that with a leg.
Yeah.
I'll cut everything off, but like the actually good.
The ball of
Yeah. No,
there's a bunch of ways to do it. I love experimenting with wild game. One, because most of the time, it's not something you normally cook. I'm sure there's some people listening that cook wild game day in and day out, and you're probably way better than we are. But I eat wild game probably once a week, maybe twice a week if I'm if we're lucky. So
life gets busy too. It's hard man. It's hard. It's hard.
If you're doing it, if that's the way you survive, is you're bringing in 5, 6, 7, 6 deer a year, then. Yeah, I mean, you're probably gotten real good at it. Who's unbelievable at it is, so Russell, who's our outfitter, his wife, Pam, I've known their family for a little while. His wife, Pam, knows how to cook just about any piece of wild game as good as any executive chef I know.
Really?
She is out freaking stand. Like, I was texting her while we were in the blind, and I'm like, all right, you got to give us the trick to cook these tonight. Because, but they eat a lot of wild game.
There's some people that's like that, and I'm trying to move further towards that.
Mm-hmm.
But dude, when you're on your own business and you're on the go and you're back and forth, you're in an airport, you're at a gas station or something like that, and you got to go to that next call or something. It's tough.
Yeah,
it's really tough.
We used to eat it. On average, 2 or 3 days a week, and I think the hardest part got to be just planning ahead, because it's not like you can just run and grab something that's not
de-thawed and
deep frozen.
Yeah.
So trying to plan ahead, and as the kids got to a certain age of graduation and stuff, and sports, it was very hard. And now that they're getting, older, out of college, out of high school, I think it's a little easier. And it's easier for me because not growing up in a hunting family, didn't really have that coaching of how to cook it good. So I spent a lot of time eating wild game that tastes like wild game.
Yeah.
And so, and I got to, just, I don't know if you, sort of like that acquired taste. But so now, really good wild game is like really good wild game.
Yeah.
Because I'll eat a backstrap cut up, thrown in a frying pan with some onions and butter, and like that's what I was used to.
Well, we've talked about it before together. It's about preparation also. You know, if you prep it right, then you can have good tasting meat.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's especially with fowl species.
Get it off the bone.
Get it off the bone, or get it. What I found, and I do this with duck, and I actually did this with a couple of the ones we shot the second day, because I think we ran out. We're all kind of rushing to get out of there the second day. So there's a few of them I just threw in a grocery bag and put on ice and took them home. And I prepped them the same way I do geese and duck, where I put them in the fridge breast up, and I got a beer fridge out in the shop that my wife doesn't go out to, so I don't care what it smells like. And we ended up putting a bunch of them in there breast side up, and what happens is all that blood runs down.
When you say breast side, cut side up?
No, cut side down.
Completely whole. I hadn't butchered them at all yet. Literally the whole bird.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I do, again, with ducks, now with the crane, it takes up a little more space. But I did them breast side up in the fridge, and it lets all that blood run out of the breast down into the back where I'm only breasting them out. And the same thing with duck and geese, and I'll leave them in there for 5 or 6 days. And it's like aging, like hanging a deer, right? Like you're drawing all that blood out of the meat. You're doing the same thing.
Well,
so I did a couple with those, and it made a big difference. Not that they were bad, I mean, we killed them and ate them 2 hours later, but it gave, I don't want to say a completely different taste, but it gave a more mild taste.
Didn't dry them out?
No, not at all.
Oh.
I mean, when I say it didn't dry them out, they probably lost a little bit of moisture, but they didn't taste dried out. Right. They just didn't feel as floppy. It's kind of, we talked about earlier about backstrap. Same thing when you dry out backstrap. Like it's not going to feel as floppy, but it's going to taste just as tender. Yeah. It just doesn't have that moisture, and all that moisture cooks out when you cook it anyway.
I think it probably has to go back to the texture of it and being a lot like beef, because, like you said, a lot of beef you'll age and dry out, which, literally. But you do that with duck or goose or something, and it's overcooking it especially.
Right.
Is about the worst thing I think you can do to it.
For sure. And wild game in general is that way too.
Yeah. Probably half the people do that because
I think they don't like wild game because they
don't cook it. And that's the thing, like whenever I was younger, if I ever killed anything, the only person I had to really cook it was my grandma.
Right.
So if Nanny's not cooking it, then it's going to go in the freezer and we're not going to really eat it.
Right.
So Nanny cook it. She's going to cook it either well done, and we ate it, it was fine, or she's going to put it in
because if you get sick, you'll die.
Yeah, exactly. Or put it in some breading,
deep fry,
and some gravy, and it's good.
Right.
So if you don't cook it like that, people's like, oh, I ain't eating that.
Well, it's like backstrap with cream cheese and jalapenos.
Yeah.
Right. Like how many people do you know? That's the only way they know how to cook backstrap.
Yeah. It doesn't taste like anything but
cream cheese and jalapenos.
Exactly. And that's why they like it.
Yeah. It's funny. The best jerky I've ever had, hands down, was goose jerky. And
was it texture or something that had something to do with it?
It was.
I've had duck jerky before, and it was good.
It was in strips, almost like it was ground and then shot out of a press gun. Yeah. And I don't know what spices were mixed with it. It was early on, maybe the first or second season of the show.
Might be something good to do with those legs. Like cut those on the crane and do that. Thinking about it.
It was
because you're gonna grind them up anyway.
Yeah.
I would have if you'd have told me, hey, you want some goose jerky, I'd have been like, but they were like, hey, you want some jerky? And I was like, yeah. And I was like, wow, what is this? And we were on a waterfowl hunt, and he told me, I was like, you're full of crap.
Yeah.
He's like, no, really. And then I think later that night we went over. The guy we were hunting with up there went over to his house, and it was either his mom or his grandma made some goose, some kind of orange sauce.
Oh yeah.
And I thought, oh yeah, gosh.
Like a orange chicken kind of Asian thing. Or?
I don't know. It was heaven. I mean, it was better than Oreos. I mean, it was. I was in heaven, but I was also pissed that I didn't know about how to cook waterfowl like this.
Yeah.
But I don't know, waterfowl. I love hunting. you know, just the dogs and just the calling aspect of it and stuff. I don't know
Which
if I
that's the
got
first time I really seen anybody call at them too.
to
like, I didn't-
Sandhill.
Yeah, when we were there on my first hunt with it, was, you know, he used a goose call and just kind of made
Wow.
a sound, but he actually had that crane call, and like it really worked. I thought,
He was good at it too.
yeah,
I'm not
Yeah.
I don't know if I got just burnt out from eating it so much early on. I'm not a big fan of eating waterfowl. If you know, nowadays if I do go, it's, you know, I'll have to make sure before I go. I'll ask, you know, who I'm going with if they want it.
want it.
Yeah. But just, you know, with the availability of, you know, as much deer and elk and stuff that we have,
man, if you take as far as like a duck, if you take it and leave that skin on with the fat, pluck it, leave that on that breast and cut that breast out,
sear on,
and then sear that. Oh my gosh,
well,
It's
now
dang
if I had
good, man.
Callahan
boy,
living in my house, I wouldn't have that
Boy.
issue.
have a little chef's quarter downstairs.
Yeah, I'd keep it all. I'd be trading some of my, you know, elk meat for
yeah,
duck meat.
And that's the hard thing too. Is I mean, your scale of quality there. You know, you can get so much unbelievably great meat off elk
yeah.
that, you know, and you can afford to screw some of it up, and you're still going to get a lot of
Yeah.
great meat off it. And then you go to the duck, and it's like,
You get
man,
these two little.
yeah.
I don't
things
know
that
if
might-
you held, you know, the best piece of duck I've ever had, still don't think it holds a candle to the best piece of
Right.
elk I've ever had.
No, not
Not that it's
close.
bad by any means.
Yeah.
You can't always eat, you know, filet mignon every
Yeah.
night, but
Well, it's one of those things, you know, like whenever friends come over, I like to pull something out and cook something different that they, you know, either might not have liked or that they've never had before. And you can, you know, I like to have variety in there.
Is that why you raise those possums?
Yeah. You ever had a possum soup before?
is that possum on the half shell? Is
Yeah.
that-
No,
that was
That's
armadillo. Never
armadillo.
mind.
That's a military.
military.
That's a military or military raccoon. Yeah.
Yeah. No. I think elk is.
Axis deer.
So
Axis
until I
deers.
killed my first axis, I would have said elk is my favorite. But it may be a close second now after killing axis.
It's hard.
Yeah,
It's
it's
good, man.
Yeah,
I mean, they hand feed those axis, so they walk out.
yeah. I mean,
Not much running going
they're
on.
eating, they're eating Wheaties and
Yeah.
watching TV in the
Yeah.
afternoon.
right. But it's
Those
25
Texans
cents
hunt
a
different.
handful every time you
Yeah,
want
that's the
to
problem.
feed them.
Someone left the petting zoo door open.
Right. Yeah. No, the first axis I killed, it was hot, and we were a ways back, and I think it had gotten just too warm for too long, as hard as I tried, and so when I did bring it back and cook some, thought I'd been lied to, and I just couldn't figure it out. I tried cooking it different ways, and it was okay. It's just not what the hype had made it. And so the next time I got to go kill one and you know, prepared ahead of time, made sure we had, you know, coolers with ice packs or whatever, a way to get it, because I mean, crap, I think it was you know, in the 90s the first one I killed, and close to that on the second one, but got it cooled down much faster. Snapped whatever pictures we needed to really quick, got it gutted, cooled down, got the skin off of it, and man, that made a giant difference.
That's half of it with everything. I mean, you just got to get it to a conditioned place and get it to where it can, you know, most people, they do that. They throw it in the back of a truck bed, or they leave it on the four-wheeler in the sun, and they're doing this or that, drinking beer, hanging out, and they cut a leg off and they cook it, and they go, God dang, this is terrible. Well, yeah, it's going to be that way.
Yeah, what's
it's
this
hard
thing
to
been eating?
Do that to a cow and see how that cow tastes.
It's hard to, you know, you're comparing, you know, even axis to axis, you're comparing apples to oranges.
Yeah.
You know, because it's a natural animal.
Yeah.
So it's like someone basing, you know, the venison off of, well, I, you know, got this old mule deer that, you know, been running around for 12 years versus, you know, I shot this yearling, knocked the spots off it.
Yeah.
You tell me which one's going to taste better.
Yeah.
You know, I tell people that when we're
I'll shoot
cooking.
the yearling every time.
Well, I'm telling you, there's a lot of spots on the ground where I hunt. No, I tell people that with barbecue, with brisket, is they'll cook brisket. I'm like, man, I just can't do it. You know, and it's every animal's different. You have to analyze each individual piece of meat. You know, that there's two briskets on a cow. But no two
Left
cows.
side and the right side.
Left side and right. It's on the chest of the cow, right? It's kind of like the breast of the cow.
Cow
It's a
titties.
brisket. Yeah, cow titties. But no two cows are the same. You know, just like you and I aren't the same.
Yeah.
Like I may prefer to sleep on my left side, and you might sleep on your right, and you might get 10 or 15 minutes more exercise, or a lot more than I do. We both have different diets, and you would prefer, as a cow, one type of grass, and I might prefer the other. And then you put all those in, and then people think,
Variables.
everything's always going to taste the same. It's like, no, man,
Yeah.
it doesn't at all. Like you have to account for that. It's the same thing with wild game. I mean, even the same axis deer in the same conditions, it comes down to, was it in the sun for 20 minutes longer, or did this one sit in the shade
Or
for an
an
extra
old
20
rutting
minutes,
buck
or an
or
old
something,
rutting
yeah.
buck, or what time of year, all that kind of stuff
Yeah.
goes into play.
Speaking of exercise and weight, how on earth, working for a company like Hasty Bake, where you basically you're cooking or around cooking for a living, you've lost some weight in the last year or so.
Yeah, I had to. COVID scared me a little bit. Caught COVID at the end of 2020. Didn't go into the hospital, but probably should have. Had some labored breathing that scared me a little bit. A couple nights where I'm sitting up there with a pulse ox meter on my finger, just trying not to, anxiety attack. So came out of that, and it's like, man, I gotta figure out what's going on. So went and talked to a couple doctors, and they basically said, let's just start running blood work and try to fine tune what we need to fine tune. So they said, you got to do this and make this change and take this vitamin and do this kind of exercise. And I kind of just took it as science and started doing it. Definitely not fun. I mean, anyone who knows, who's lost a decent amount of weight knows it's a lot of work. But over time, it pays off. So you make the right decision for you, whatever that decision is, and run down that road and don't look back. And if you can do that, lucky enough to stay on that path and get healthier. So yeah, but being around barbecue, it's actually funny. It helps being around barbecue because I cook less and eat less than I ever did before in my life, because you do it for so often. Like you're cooking for other people, or you're it's like saying you work in the hunting industry. Like, do you hunt more? Well, yeah, but it's work now. Like, how much hunting do you do? On your own
stay away
for
from the
fun,
sides.
right? So for me, it's like barbecue's work. So I still have those weekends where I'm like, man, I just want to sit home and grill out. But it's not every night of the week, because, man, I might have been cooking and doing recipe videos for 4 hours today, and the last thing I want to do is fire up a grill when I get home. So that it does help a little bit.
How do you not just eat everything that you've got on that grill?
Man, it was even before I tried to get healthy, it was like this: is when you're slaving over fire 6, 8, 10 hours, smelling it that entire time, going from raw to seasoned to check-in and this and that, sweating it, all that kind of stuff. At this point, like, man, I would eat a slice of brisket just to make sure I didn't screw the thing up, and then everyone else have at it. Like, I don't want anything to do. Like, I'll grab a Taco Bell on the way home, because I've been
think
smelling
that would
it all
have
day.
the opposite effect by
Yeah,
by going and eating more fast food instead of
Yeah,
the red meat off the grill. That
What's
yeah.
your
I mean,
less
it definitely
fats.
could, I guess.
What's your biggest thing that you notice a difference in, that you changed? Like, what's been the biggest difference?
So, I mean, after I started losing weight, moving became easier, and then it became easier and easier and easier. So that helped. But protein and water were my big things, and lean protein, not tons and tons and tons of beef. But that was kind of my big thing. Is just, I didn't necessarily change my portion size right away, but I'm changing the percentage of what I'm eating. So I'm cutting down on the fats. I'm cutting way down on the carbs. I almost completely eliminated sugars. Now I've almost 100% eliminated sugar. But it was just crank that protein up, because when you fill yourself with protein, you don't have a lot of room for other stuff.
Yeah.
And then it became, okay, now I can make room for some vegetables and some, complex carbs and things like that. But that was probably the biggest, although honestly, cutting sugar out was hard. But that was probably the thing now that I'm like, if I ate something with a piece of sugar in it that I wasn't expecting, I can tell you there's sugar in it, because it'll wire me right off the bat, and my stomach will turn just like that, because you're just not used to it anymore.
Yeah.
Like, there's been times, we'll be sitting, I travel quite a bit for work, so I'm sitting at the, at the bar 9, 10 o'clock with the guys, and I'll order a, whiskey and Coke, or whiskey and Diet Coke, and they'll bring it back, and I'll be like, I want a whiskey and Diet. They're like, that's it. And I said, no, it's not. And they'll go remake it. I was like, all right, that's Diet. Because I can tell. You just tell that. I mean, honestly, like, the minute I hit sugar, it's probably 3 or 4 minutes in, and my stomach will just, it won't like gurgle, but it just almost goes sour.
Yeah.
Do you get like a bad taste in your mouth from sugar?
I can. Depends on what it is.
I know.
Coke and stuff like that, especially. Like,
Yeah.
it'll almost dry up my mouth instantly.
I don't know. Never really drank sweet tea. I don't drink pop, and I mean, I eat my fair share of sugar stuff probably, but drinking stuff, especially with sugar in it, I can tell after the first drink, like I can't stand sweet tea. Not because it doesn't taste good, but it just gives me a terrible taste in my mouth from the sugar.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, man, I don't have a religion on it or anything, but sugar's pretty toxic for us.
Oh yeah.
Like, and we now I say
natural
that
sugar
I
is
say that as a
different.
hobbyist whiskey drinker and everything else. Like we all choose our own toxic toxic traits.
Yeah.
But I mean, that was one of the things of that I've learned is we're all going to have to pick the things that we're willing to concede on. And if you concede on something, then don't concede on everything.
Yeah.
And as a guy who used to be pretty big, one of the things that I've learned about myself was I never restricted myself on anything. If I went out to eat, I wanted the best sounding thing on the menu, whether it was fast food or whether it was a nice meal. If I want drinks, I want to drink the best thing on the menu. If we're gonna eat dinner, I want the best thing on. And it now it's become much more like, all right, what's the thing that's gonna make me feel the best?
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people don't.
That's hard to do.
You don't set those boundaries.
That's hard to do.
Yeah, and it's a slippery slope too.
That's awesome. How much weight have you lost?
160.
160 pounds. That's me.
Yeah, I lost a U.
That's
crazy, isn't it?
I don't.
Dang, that's got to change your world.
I mean, I could.
Yeah.
It's funny because I guess maybe just prior to the crane hunt when we met up out at Justin's or something, it was like I recognized you when you pulled up, but at some point I asked Shannon, I was like, for some reason, like it doesn't, like his face doesn't fit or something, and he was like, man, he's been losing like a bunch of weight.
Yeah.
160 pounds.
160 pounds.
Congratulations.
It took about 2.5, 3 years. So,
dang.
It's.
I bet you do feel good.
I hate having to go buy a new wardrobe.
Yeah.
But yeah, it does. But the neat thing too is like on those hunts, I realized, man, I don't get winded at all. Now,
how do you
go do an elk hunt or something. I'm sure I definitely
it's
will.
Different.
But
Anybody's
So I was getting ready to ask, how you feel about packing in one of those Rangers on our next elk hunt?
Hey, we'll you guys got a side by side? No, I mean, you obviously, as someone who doesn't work out religiously, like I'm sure you do, like there's still certain things I'm going to get winded on. But things that used to win me, like hiking in 300 yards to a deer stand and climbing a deer stand.
It has a lot to do with your body and what you put into it,
I think it does.
What stamina that you can have.
Yeah, for sure. Energy level. I mean, food is energy, right? And if you put crappy food in your system, then you're not going to have great energy. You put good food in your system, you're going to feel great.
Yeah.
Might not taste great, but it's going to feel great.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, look forward to Nick joining us on an elk hunt coming up one of these years.
Whole Ranger on the back. I got to come up with a backpack sling.
Yeah.
We might bring the little grill on that one.
Hasty Bake backpack. Well, even without it, I'd love to find the opportunity to have you in elk camp.
Yeah, man, it'd be a blast. I love it.
And
a lot of fun.
I mean, if you can cook on a grill, we can cook on a fire.
Yeah, absolutely. That's half the fun, man. When I got into barbecue, it was because I loved fire. There's something about sitting around a campfire, and I love open fire to this day. Like I love cooking over open fire. There's just something primal about it. And I know it's the same thing. All of us sitting around, we did it. At camp, sitting around a campfire, staring into the flames.
Camp aspect.
It sounds over romanticized, but to me, there's a little bit of connection to like people that's gone before us.
Until you get out there and do it, there's
right.
Yeah. I mean that's super big.
It's transit or whatever the term is to just sit there and watch it.
Transfix it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very cool.
For sure, man.
Well, man, I've enjoyed having you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
I've learned a lot about you and the connections and what we have in common. That's pretty neat. I'm sure we'll have some more good conversations next time I crash my computer.
Right, right. Give me a shout on it.
Oh,
I appreciate y'all having me out on the hunt too. That was a blast. Like I said, long-time bird hunter, but first time hunting crane. It felt like I'd never hunted a day in my life because everything I wanted to do.
Yeah.
They're like, no, don't do that. Or you can't do that when you hunt crane.
Yeah. When he was like, you got to be quiet, be still. And I'm like,
for a bird?
We're in we're 98,000
yards away.
Yeah.
Oh, these things got 20,000 years on us. Okay.
I mean, he kept saying like, don't look up. And you're like, but they're right. Don't look up. All right.
That's the worst thing to tell somebody like me. Don't do that.
Oh, looking at the footage, and I'm just like, every time I'm just looking up, I'm like, God dang it, dude.
High face. Oh, it's so great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
well, I'm serious. I think, and hope you can join us. I think it'll be an annual hunt for us.
Oh, it's
there's so much about it that's good beyond just the flavor. But
well, it's super cool. You live close too. I mean, super cool.
That helps. And hunt with those guys out there. we were talking about it earlier, the attention to detail, they taxidermy their own birds. So
That's
they're not
right,
using
yeah.
anything bought that they're, going, they're
they-
killing their own bird.
They
And
kept
they
some
say,
of them that we
yeah, they kept them. They
shot,
were
yeah.
taking the skin or
Yeah.
the, carcasses after we pulled the meat off them because they wanted, to turn
Yes.
more. And they said that's the biggest difference. So when you can go with an outfitter that pays the attention to detail of that kind of thing, building their own birds, they've got enough experience, and they don't just take any Yahoo who's hunted a few times as an outfitter. Like those guys that spent their life hunting those birds.
And
Yeah.
they spend a lot of time finding them too. I mean,
Yeah.
every time that they made sure we were in the right place.
Yeah, I think. The plans changed the day before we left because the group they had been watching had moved, and
Mhm.
so we, that's why we went to a different town. But yeah, they had 100 and something decoys that they've we call
Personally.
them taxidermy, but they take the skin off and put them on a form. And
Having a taxidermy.
Brian was out there, using a blower, getting all the dust off of them that morning.
Yeah, they're fluffing up every single bird.
Yeah,
that
that
was
was-
turning it the
But,
right direction.
having an outfitter that's that into it and that wants to have a successful hunt. If you've never done anything, you go with somebody that's that good. It's going to give you a good representation on what that hunt should be.
For sure,
I
it
know.
makes a big difference.
There's Crane Wreckers, Brian Lee Baker, for anybody listening or watching, Northeast Oklahoma.
Yep.
Actually, I say Northeast. They're in Western Oklahoma, but anywhere that you're in this earshot, they're a heck of a waterfowl outfit.
And check him out, Brian Lee Baker, too, because he doesn't just do crane during crane season.
He's
Like
got spoonbill.
yeah.
he does
He's got
spoonbill right
everything.
now.
Yeah.
He does a bunch of different stuff. So
Crappie
as a
wreckers.
guide,
Yeah.
as a guy, I think anything wreckers is what he does.
Yeah, he's just wrecking them.
You're wrecking big heads right
yeah,
now.
they're good. And I think Russell Carnes was the one who was hunting with us.
Yep.
He's the outfitter with Brian that time. Yeah, I mean, Brian was out there putting miles on the trail well before we ever woke up.
Mm-hmm.
He came in. We had one morning that we were slapping limits so far that he came in and they're like, "How you guys doing?" We're like, "Man, we're limited out. We don't want to go." And he goes, "Well, give me a gun. We
Yeah.
can stay out here
Yeah.
for a little bit."
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
All right.
That was awesome.
I look forward to next year. It's going to be a fun time.
Absolutely.
Well, guys, I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
We'll catch you all next go around.
Get inside, outdoors, hunting big game. I come alive before opening day. It's a twisted addiction that calls my name. I gotta get inside, outdoors, hunting big game.
Keep up with IOTV on social media for all their latest news, tips, and giveaways.